Hello, everyone. Another episode of the podcast here today. I am Sol, your usual host. Unfortunately, Scott isn't around today. He's started his job back up, so he's going to be quite busy. He might be in for a few episodes here and there, but this episode, I am joined with a good friend and a volunteer at Spile, Chris. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm good, thank you. Good to meet you, Sol.
Today's episode is going to be a podcast on bullying in sports.
Hi, Sol. I'm Chris. I run a martial arts club in Carlisle where we teach a Koryu Jiu-Jitsu style which originated in Japan many, many years ago, and it was brought across the UK late 90s. I've been teaching it for about 7 or 8 years now, and I've been training inside of it for this style for about 11 to 12. We run at Pirelli Social Club once a week on a Tuesday, and I'm always happy to have new members, young or old, join us. We start from age 6, and officially our oldest member in Japan is about 89 now, so there's not an age limit in terms of any of that at all.
Chris, do you have any socials that people could follow or look you up on if they're interested in getting involved?
Yeah, we do. Our website, which I won't deny needs a little bit of updating, I think it's Pirelli Jiu-Jitsu Carlisle. If you just literally Google that term, you'll find us on Facebook and our website from that as well.
Awesome. So yeah, what does bullying in sports look like? I mean, to me, there's many different types of bullying in sports. I can see a lot coming from schools. That's one of the main places that I see bullying in sports come from. But it kind of goes up all the way into like even the higher end. Like you see, the newspaper articles that I saw a while back where a lot of people, single out individuals for missing goals, and bullying in sports to me, it can look like many things, but I think one of the main ways that you can bully someone, in at least the sports that I play, which is like team-based sports like rugby, and the sports I played at school is, how do I say this? It's kind of like you can bully people by leaving them out of the sport.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you can end up like leaving them on the bench all game. I know that happens quite a lot. I think there's some rules that have been introduced to stop that in a couple of sports. I think that's a big part of bullying in sports, is leaving people out that you don't think is as good. I think that can come from the coach and it can come from the players. And
I would agree. I mean, I don't play any team sports in that way myself, but certainly from school perspective, I never considered it as bullying until you mentioned it there. But yeah, I was the one that was at the end of the pick list. I was never picked. Generally because I just couldn't play the sports very well, to be honest. But it was everywhere. It was in a school environment. It was from the changing rooms onwards.
Yeah.
Really, for me, and on the pitch and the whenever you played them to a degree as well.
Yeah, I think that can be the thing about bullying. I think there's a lot of things that if they happen to you enough, then they can become bullying. And if you're constantly that person that's being left to pick last, you're always the person that people are saying like, oh, we don't want him on our team. And it can get to the point where you can be bullied from that. What kind of things do you see in, I mean, I know you're in martial arts.
Yeah, I teach at a club in Carlisle, that's right, yeah, Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. What kind of bullying do you see in that kind of an area? Like maybe not in your group specifically, but what kind of bullying do you experience in that situation?
It's an interesting one. I mean, over the years, I mean, I've been a member of a few clubs since I started training many years ago now, and I think it's on any level. I've experienced it. Again, at the time, I wouldn't have really considered it bullying, but there was instructors who would turn up and teach a class from another area, and they would for some reason single people out and pick on them a little bit by either mocking them or maybe using them to demonstrate a technique on them, maybe going a little bit too far. It's that type of stuff. I've never seen it personally. Well, actually, no, that's not. In the past, I never saw it person to person. I have seen it more in recent years where perhaps somebody else in the club is perhaps jealous of somebody else's level or position or closeness to the instructor, perhaps, where they then try and make it difficult for you to be in that session by, passing comment to the instructor about you, trying to make things up or make your life difficult by, just being negative towards you in other areas. And when they're training with you, perhaps just go a bit too far with techniques and inflict a bit of pain where it doesn't necessarily need to be. It's that level for me. It's you would think in some ways it wouldn't be there, but it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think one of at least one of the parts that I've experienced most can come from the people that coach you and teach you. You know, it can be quite hard for even them to realise sometimes that what they're doing it was bullying, but singling people out. Or I mean, especially martial arts. I used to do martial arts myself, and obviously you need to have someone to demonstrate a technique on when you're showing the rest of the class, right? And
Yeah.
you know, like you say, looking back on it now, I see that there was sometimes some people that were singled out for the demonstration more than others. If you do it repeatedly and often enough, then it can get to be bullying, and that's where you get to, and that's where you can suffer problems with your mental state if that's happening to you a lot. You go home from a session, and you like, you're thinking like, oh, why is my coach always singling me out? Why is my trainer always showing like practicing stuff on me? And sometimes as well, it cannot be it cannot come from a place of badness as well. It could come from a place of, specifically martial arts. I'm thinking it come from a place of like they might perceive you as maybe the best in the group, and they think that you can handle it, that kind of thing. Like I think sometimes it can be kind of a miscommunication. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, but I think a lot of the times, if you can communicate with your coach about things, and you can foster a much better environment. But we'll talk about.
I think I won't go too far, but I would agree on there. It's multitude.
We'll talk about how to make a bit of a nicer environment in a little bit. But I think communication is a really big key, especially in sports, about how to have a nicer kind of like team or group.
I think in schools, when I've seen it, it's more being the people who get picked on anyway. That when they're in a PE environment, it just gives them another avenue to pick on them. Where there's you got left in the changing rooms for 20 minutes while you got ready before you started.
Exactly.
Prime opportunity for anybody to be picked on when there's no teachers around, and there's
of course
places to go and hide where you're not seen even doing it. That's more my experience than when you're actually out on the pitch, particularly.
Yeah, I did see quite a bit of that in the changing rooms. It can start from there, can't it? And maybe not just in sports as well, but sports like running as well, and athletic sports. They're also sports where you can experience bullying. Things like, not being picked up for, I don't know if you ever did these, but we used to do, I think most schools do them, but we used to do like yearly sports days and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was always that one person that didn't get picked for anything, and after a few years, the teachers were like, right, well, we want at least everyone to do one thing. But for the first few years, at least I was in school, there was that kind of, there was always some people that weren't being picked by everyone else to do things, and it can show up in every avenue of sport. Not just group sports or team sports, athletics as well, and even track and field events. Yeah, it's. Obviously, bullying is not a good thing. If you want to learn a little bit more about bullying, we do have other podcasts on that, or we will be making other podcasts on that. I don't want to go into bullying as a whole specifically on this podcast. But I think if we're talking in terms of sports, then there's lots of negative impact you can have from bullying in a sport, right? Because for me, a sport is supposed to be something it's a hobby, right? A sport is something you do as a hobby. It's something you're supposed to enjoy. Something, in the general case, it's something that you want to go to, right? Whereas school maybe isn't something you want to go to. But a sports environment tends to be something that you want to engage in, right? So when you're bullied in an environment like that, it can be really, really, really hard to want to continue doing a hobby, and later on in life you can start to maybe relate the bullying in that sport to the sport itself, and it can drive you out of the sport and put you down. When you get on the field, or when you get in the ring, or when you get to where you're performing the sport, it can wear on your mind and it can affect your performance. There's so many ways it can affect you in the sport.
Yeah, I think from my experience, it puts you off even wanting to do it. I mean, I never enjoyed PE and sports anyway, so it wasn't really an issue for me in terms of if I was picked last for the football team, it didn't really matter because I didn't want to play it anyway. However, I think if I'd have been encouraged more and people around me didn't pick me last and decided to be positive about it and involve you, then potentially I might have got better and enjoyed it and actually wanted to do it more. So it never ever encouraged me to look outside of school and join any other clubs, because I never got any enjoyment from it in school, which is probably why I don't do any of it now, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it can have lots of effect, especially in team sports as well. I think, if you play in a sport like football or rugby or any team sport really, if you're playing on a team with someone who bullies you or multiple people who bully you, then you're not going to perform at your best. You're just not.
No.
You just can't.
Mhm.
And I think that it just all adds up. Right? It adds up to you're not performing well. You're being bullied by others. It's not a safe space for you, and it can drive people out of sports, which I think is really not a good thing. Because sports, we're going to talk about this in another podcast. We're going to do a podcast on like ways to self-help, and exercise is like a really big way of self-helping, and sports is a big part of exercise. And obviously, for a lot of people, I think exercising with others is a lot more enjoyable than just going out for a jog. So I think having a safe space in sports is really important.
I guess, people's experiences through school and a little bit are going to impact that decision later on in life. If they've had a negative experience through school with it, they're not going to go looking it up in the future, even if they perhaps enjoyed it or wanted to enjoy it and be better. It's going to knock on all the way through.
Yeah, it's not fun, but there are things you can do as an individual and as a group, as a team. There are things you can do to avoid that. I'm just going to ask you first, because you are kind of a, what's the word? You're an owner in like a sports sense. You own a sports club. You run a sports club. So, I mean, from your experience, what kind of things do you do to try and foster a safe space or a healthy environment for people to do martial arts in?
It's about being open to questions and not. I mean, I think often the perception of being instructing somebody else can be that actually you're correcting wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas actually what we try and do is improve what's already good.
Yeah.
And just being a more positive environment like that, where I'm also, I'm not hidden away or somehow positioning myself as some superior person just because I teach it.
Yeah.
I'm not better in terms of any level of personality than anybody else in the club, and I don't personally position myself at that level. And I think you've got to be open to that question and that communication without putting any walls in place. I've been lucky that I've never in my own club had that issue to deal with. My issues have been in the past when I've been the student, not the instructor. And I know full well if you don't have that, then people don't come back.
Very
basically.
true.
And it's got to be fun, and it's got to have that level of openness to it.
I think being able to have a safe space to do sports in is really important. When you were saying that a lot of what you've experienced was when you were younger, what things did you notice that maybe like your coaches didn't do? Like for me, I feel like a lot of the people teaching sometimes maybe did think of themselves like a bit above everyone else because they were in charge of the class, especially in school, because you're also your young children and they're an adult and they're teaching you. I think there can be a clarity and kind of like coming at you as a person instead of a person.
I think there's an ego for some people. I think if they're my experience when I was a student of a club as opposed to instructing it was literally one or two people at the high levels of it who were literally, that was the highest grade you could achieve when they were teaching. It was often taught through shouting, through abuse, through literally forcing you almost to do something you weren't comfortable to do. Now, for some people that works, some people that will push them to do it, and in some occasions for me it would as well. But I've had experiences where everybody got to go up in the middle and demonstrate something, and I couldn't do it. And the guy running the class was literally shouting at me and saying, "What you doing?" And I started laughing at myself because I just couldn't do it. And he took that as an absolute insult and had a right go at me in the middle of the mat. And I'm on me. And it's like, well, that's not going to help me get any better. And it literally, if that person was ever teaching a session and I knew they were teaching, it put me off going to it because I had no desire to be in that environment. It's that level of it. I've never had it from another in the past anyway. I've never had it from another member,
Hmm.
particularly like that. More recently ish, but not to that level. But it's ego based. I tend to
Yeah.
find a lot of it, as opposed to anything else.
Yeah. What do you think could have been? What do you think? What would you like? You know, if you could go back and tell whoever this person was, how to make it, you know, like a nicer place or a nicer learning environment, nicer sports group for everyone. What kind of things do you think you would like to go back and let them know?
Wow. I'd love to expect if they'd actually want me to do it
Yeah.
and not dislike me telling them in the first place.
Yeah.
I think certainly at that level, that's a question to answer that, to be honest.
A deep one.
It is that, that awareness of, look, that has not helped me learn that technique any better than I did before, because it
Hmm.
literally put me right off doing it.
Yeah.
And it knocked my confidence of doing it, and I had then no desire to even practice it to get any better. So I think those people, I don't know. I'm not sure what I would say to change their approach
Yeah.
beyond making them aware of what it actually does to certain people, and that
Yeah.
it's like, put me off training with them. Like, if you run a session in the future, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to do. I'm not interested.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of bullying as a whole. I think being aware or being educated, that's a big part of what we do on this podcast, is trying to make people aware of what things that can happen, and, you know, ways to stop things. I think being aware that bullying in sports is a thing, and that bullying isn't just calling people names and, you know, physically hurting them. Bullying in sport can be, you know, like psychological and mind games and things like that. I think it's important to make people aware. And you know, that's what we're here to do, make people aware of these kind of things.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just want to touch on as well, sports isn't all bad. I loved sports. I used to play rugby. I played it for many years. I did martial arts for, I think, 4 or 5 years as well.
Mhm.
And sports can be a really big, you know, like life changer for a lot of people. I think for me they were. I think my life would be a lot different if I didn't do rugby or martial arts back then.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of talk on like what good things sports can do for you, and like why you should, you know, if you're able enough to seek out a sports group or a sports team or martial arts, then I think you probably should, because I think everyone should do, or at least give some sort of sports a go. You know, because it's not the same environment that you get at school. I think that's what puts a lot of people off sports outside of school, is their experience in school.
Yeah. I mean, my own confidence was not locked. The confidence I've got is me. I've always been confident in who I am and what I'll do and what I won't do.
Mm-hmm.
What I've lacked was a physical confidence.
Yeah.
And I think sports give you that body control almost, and aware of your own physicalities, that it can significantly impact on how you just behave in life.
Yeah.
There's a lot of situations I avoided when I was younger because I didn't have the physical confidence to trust myself to be able to handle them.
Yeah.
And I think seeing my own kids come up through, you know, even ballet and other things like that, you know, the physical confidence they've got just because they're used to moving around between people and being in rooms full of others and noise, and there's so many benefits to it, you know, psychologically, irrespective of the physical side, that I think it's such an important area to be involved in if you can.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Physical exercise is one of the big ways you can self-help. Because if you're feeling well in your own body and you're feeling physically fit, then your mental state, it might not just be instantly better. It's not the one fix for everything, but it does help, and sports is going to be a big part of that.
It gives you a tribe, I think, as well. It gives you people to be around who are even on the sports side of things, are on your wavelength. And it's such a positive place to go to, or at least it should be.
Yeah.
You know, that it gives you that again, that feeling of belonging, I suppose, which often people who are being bullied don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
Because it's that lone wolf type of, to have that tribe and belonging is really, really powerful.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think sports can be such a positive thing.
And a lot of friendships come from sports, let's
Yeah.
be honest. And I think if any, it brings people together that wouldn't necessarily interact, because most people have got literally no similarities outside of it,
Yeah.
other than their enjoyment of the same thing at that one point. And it certainly puts you in touch with people that, I mean, I've got some great friends through martial arts that I would never have met elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to just develop that social circle.
Yeah.
Which in itself is important to your own well-being, really, is for the same reasons.
What do you think specifically martial arts can do for you as a sport to help you emotionally that maybe other sports can't, or maybe not even other sports can't? Just, what do you think it can do for you?
I think it normalizes. I mean, in terms of self-confidence, it normalizes situations that a lot of people are not used to being in, or at least find difficult. And that is literally what, a bit like I said before, it's being able to walk through a crowded bar and not be concerned about all the people around you and stuff like that. It's just the kind of the mindset of, because all sports have got mindset involved, but I think martial arts particularly have got a mindset element where it's realizing that, you've got some control over what goes on. And actually, I think that the key for us is that you're actually not the victim mindset. You need to, as soon as anything in your little spidey sense tingles, you've got to turn on the fact that you're the one that's going to control it, and not waiting for somebody else, so that you lose the victim mindset, or at least that's what we work on, which utterly changes your emotional approach and responses to things when you've got that awareness. And does it give you any more? I mean, I think a lot of people take martial arts up because they kind of almost perceive they're going to become some invulnerable superhero.
Yeah.
And it actually, for me, is not how it works. I almost feel as if I expected it to do that, but actually what I realized was that the martial arts in itself were not the big benefit to me. That the big benefit to me was understanding my own psyche and realizing my own mindset needed worked on as well. From my perspective.
Yeah, I think for me, martial arts, I was bullied in school a lot, and when I picked martial arts up, instead of making me a superhuman, I think for me it just made everyone else more like a person. Because I think when I was bullied, it was quite hard for me to see myself on the same level as some of the people that were perpetrating that. And learning martial arts, it gave me personally a lot of confidence in myself, being able to handle those situations, and it made everyone else more, at least from my perspective, seem more like a person, and not like this kind of figurehead that was like this big all-encompassing thing in my life. I think it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I took it up sooner than I did, to be honest. It might have. I mean, I'm always a one to think I'll look back and actually not want to change the past, because it would change where I am now. But I know we purposely encourage our kids to be involved with certain things in life that I know are so beneficial to them in later life, that it's important for them to be in those positions and places.
Yeah, I mean, it's been lovely chatting with you, Chris. I'm just wary of the time, so I'm just gonna. I think we should go through some kind of finishing thoughts. Just kind of summarize everything together a little bit, just towards the end. So, I think what you should take away from this podcast is communication's important. Sports can be really positive, as long as you're in a positive space, and I think everyone should be encouraged to at least give sport a go. Because I mean, if you didn't like rugby, you might like hockey. If you didn't like hockey, you might like football. If you didn't like football, you might like martial arts. You might like running. It's not about, I don't like all sport. You might enjoy one sport and you don't enjoy another. So I think it's worth giving them all a go, because I think sports, like you said over this episode, it can be really good. It can help you make friends. It can build the confidence in yourself. Do a lot of things for you.
Yeah, and actually to not forget that there is more than one place to do the same sport sometimes. if you don't enjoy where you are for one football coach, there are plenty more around, and it's sometimes about finding the right one for you that feels safe and enjoyable. And if it doesn't, go looking elsewhere. If you really want to do something, don't let one place put you off.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. So it's been wonderful chatting, Chris.
Thank you.
I would love to have you on for another episode if you want to talk about something else sometime. It's been really nice.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm sure I've got plenty of useless information to pass on many areas of life, I'm sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening in. But yeah, if you guys have enjoyed this episode, then make sure to follow subscribe to our YouTube, follow our Twitter, follow our Facebook. I think that's all we've got. And if you are someone who's suffering from the effects of bullying, or you're experiencing the effects of bullying in your own life, live around Carlisle, Allerdale, or Copeland, and you can take a look at our website.